O'Shea Sibley was a dancer. And like me, he was black and gay. But he was murdered because he was gay in New York. Those of you who are from New York probably have already heard this story. Some people probably have not. I'm going to share my screen, and this is going to be tough to watch, but I'm going to give you guys a viewer discretion advised now because this is going to be tough. But we have to talk about this. O'Shea Sibley was a 28-year-old dancer, and he was killed by a teenager. Let's go.
This professional dancer was stabbed by a teen shouting homophobic slurs.
They murdered him because he was gay. Because he stood up for his friends.
On the night of July 29th, 28-year-old O'Shea Sibley and his friends were voguing while pumping gas at a Brooklyn gas station when a group of men told them to stop dancing while screaming homophobic slurs. Witnesses say Sibley was trying to diffuse tensions between the two groups when things quickly escalated.
And he was just saying, we may be gay and we listen to our music, but it's no hate. It's all love. And you stabbed him. You stabbed my brother.
CCTV footage shows the assailant then fled the scene in a black SUV. Sibley was rushed to a local hospital where he was pronounced dead.
Just pumping gas and listening to Renaissance and just having a good time. That killed O'Shea.
As of August 1st, police are still searching for the 17-year-old suspect who may face murder and hate crime charges. According to police, witnesses said there may have been a religious motive to the slaying. This professional...
So if anybody knows, voguing is basically a dance that's done. It started off in the ballroom, the underground ballroom scene back in the 80s, you know, especially among gay and trans culture. And O'Shea and his friends were just dancing to Beyonce music at a gas station. And that prompted these young men really a boy, to get into an altercation with them because they didn't like that they were doing a dance that's associated with gay culture. And they were gay. And they murdered O'Shea Sibley. He stabbed him to death. So this happens in, you know, our nation, and let's get more details. So it says, man fatally stabbed in confrontation as he danced at a gas station. O'Shea Sibley was at a Brooklyn gas station with friends late Saturday night, filling up a car and blasting music by Beyonce, when a group of men approached him and told him to stop dancing, according to friends. The men began using slurs, and Mr. Sibley, 28, a gay man who was a professional dancer and choreographer, confronted them. According to his friends, and a video of the altercation, the argument escalated, and one man, actually a 17-year-old boy, stabbed Mr. Sibley. According to the police, Otis Pena, one of Mr. Sibley's best friends, pressed on his wound to stop the bleeding before he was taken to a Maimonides medical center before he was pronounced dead. No arrests have been made by Monday, but the police said that the hate crimes unit was involved in the investigation. The Anti-Defamation League also ruled it as a hate crime. There was an update on the story, and in fact, the young man the teenager that killed O'Shea had turned himself in. It says the 17-year-old who police believe is responsible for the stabbing death of the 28-year-old professional dancer at a Brooklyn gas station last weekend has turned himself in. The teenager turned himself in with his attorney and now is in police custody. O'Shea Sibley was dancing and voguing. Let me see here. It says Sibley was a professional dancer and he also performed at New York City's renowned Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. When it comes to what happened to O'Shea, I'm going to get a lot of people who are going to go, this is a social issue. Why are you talking about this? One thing I think that people need to realize is that social issues are also class issues. Let's go. Why were black people brought here to the United States as slaves? Were we brought here because we were black? Or were we brought here because they wanted free labor in order to cultivate the land so that they can make money off of it without having to pay any type of labor? The answer is B. And so in order to have a differentiation between us and the white indentured servants, the biggest identifying factor was skin color. So then that class issue birthed racism. Because back in the day, if you were a British person, you differentiated between Scots, Germans, Irish, Italian. There was no white. There wasn't. And so the biggest demarcation was, oh, we're brown or black, and they are white. So ultimately, it turned into a race issue. So people with my skin color were considered second-class citizens. It always goes back to class. If you are not cisgender, white, male, heterosexual, you are subject to a lower class. And what happens is they will use you being part of a disenfranchised group as a means to divide the working class so that we don't come together and actually look at who is actually oppressing us. And so because of that, that's used to make people look at people who are like me as the enemy, when in reality, the real oppressors are the people who are at the top. So these different types of prejudices, these different types of bigotry are used as a tool in order to keep them in power and the rest of us lower. So ultimately, it is a class issue. And they use that bigotry, and they instill it into the minds of young people, like the person who murdered O'Shea. And then they murder O'Shea. And this was based on religious reasons, because apparently the young man was Muslim. And there's no difference between that young man and some people who call themselves Christian in this nation who do the exact same thing or would do the exact same thing, or who don a assault rifle and run up into a church or into a shopping center to kill people, or who would run up into a club and shoot people down. So they'll use religious fanaticism as a way to also keep us divided so that we don't end up looking at the people who are really the corporate dictators of this nation, so that we don't come together as a coalition to change the foundations of the system. So that's the problem. And there are many people who are victims of these consequences. Now you can say, well, yeah, there are some gay people who are higher up in the system who have billions of dollars and things like that. It doesn't matter. There are black people who are billionaires too. Just because they have some of our identities doesn't mean they're less of an exploitative person. They're less of an oppressor. Okay, they allowed some people of disenfranchised group to join their ranks. Yeah, okay, fine. But the thing is that the point is there's still this small group of people who are oppressing and exploiting everybody else. So ultimately, when it comes to this issue, it's not just an identity issue, it's also a class issue. And I want to say something to my fellow black people. Because you'll have black people that'll go, and black people, family, y'all really need to wise up to this. When we talk about LGBTQ issues, it is not to separate from black issues. Recognize that we are still black at the end of the day, and we are still part of the community. So when we talk about black LGBTQ issues, if I talk about LGBTQ issues as a black person, and you start complaining about it, are you going to keep that same energy when a black woman starts talking about women's issues as a black woman? No, you wouldn't dare, right? Because that's also part of her identity. This is also part of our identity. While being black. See, it's a little thing called intersectionality that you need to learn. And this is a blind spot that the black community really needs to work on. Because some of y'all will go apeshit over black trans women, when in reality, they're coming for all of us. And it behooves us to build solidarity with one another in order so that we can actually fight for our liberation. To put a finer point on it, let me share this with y'all. This gentleman said something very salient in my view, and I appreciate this. And I shared this on Twitter. Didn't get that much traction, but it's whatever. But listen to this.
But when we don't fight for all black liberation, we are literally working in the lane of white supremacy. Because in order for all black people to be liberated, you got to be fighting for all black people to be liberated. We are handed a white hood, a KKK hood from the time that we are born. because we are trained to hate ourselves. We are trained to hate our hair. We're trained to hate our lips. We're trained to hate our nose. We train to hate ourselves. And so we have to constantly do that work to undo that hood, to take that hood off of ourselves. So when we say we fighting for Black liberation and Black folks' freedom, we got to fight for Black folks who are queer, who are trans, who are gay, who are straight, who are drag queens, who are not. Because it's like, really, if you Black, baby, we got to go to the keep our eyes on the prize, because that's exactly what Willie Lynch wanted. When Willie Lynch wrote that letter and had them white people hang us and divide us, that is division. So when we're not supporting all Black liberation, it is white supremacy. But
ultimately, it's not only a division of race that these people use, and by these people I mean the corporate dictators. They'll also divide us among other different lines, even within our own race. Stop being a tool used by them. You're being used by white supremacists, by capitalists, to keep us divided so that we don't liberate ourselves. And when you go along these lines, guess what? You're also dividing the working class. Do not let yourself be used by these Harlan Crows, these Elon Musks, these George Soroses, these Charles Kochs. Do not let yourself be used by them. Unfortunately, some of us allow it. That's a blind side that we need to start looking. This is why it's a class issue. And I say, listen to those of us who are in these marginalized positions. So there's a lot of outpouring of what happened with O'Shea Sibley. There's a lot of people who are gathering and basically expressing their love and condolences regarding O'Shea Sibley. So you have crowds that went to the gas station where he was murdered. This is the crowd that went out there. Let's go. So they're all out there celebrating his life. They're saying his name, O'Shea. Oops. So that's important because, you know, nobody's free until we're all free. And that's what's important. We can't celebrate our freedom unless we're all free. And I think that's the point. Freedom for all.